The barrel of steel. In the summer of 1978, the mist over Niagara carried the smell of gasoline and desperation. A 32-year-old mechanic named Henry Dodd believed he could become the first man to cross the Horseshoe Falls using a rocket-powered hang glider. Dodd had spent months building his craft from spare motorcycle parts and fuel tanks scavenged from junkyards. His friends called him the Flying Fool, but Henry insisted the glider's twin boosters would lift him clean over the falls. On August 3rd, with hundreds gathered on the Canadian side, he dragged the strange contraption to the launch ramp overlooking the roaring abyss. The countdown began, and Henry shouted through his helmet, "For history!" before igniting the engines. The machine lurched forward, wobbling violently as sparks showered the platform. For 2 perfect seconds, it soared, a stickman silhouette against the blinding mist, the crowd erupting in disbelief. Then the left booster exploded, tearing half the wing into burning fragments. The glider spun helplessly, cartwheeling toward the curtain of water as the engine screamed like a dying animal. Henry was still alive when he hit the mist, his scream cut short by the crash that followed. The remains of his rocket wings were later recovered downstream, melted into twisted shapes like bones. Days later, police divers found Henry's helmet wedged between rocks, inside his skull still partially intact, eyes staring upward. Newspapers called it the most spectacular suicide ever attempted, though Dodd's family swore he truly believed he'd survive. But the legend didn't end there. Locals claimed to see a glowing figure drifting above the falls on misty nights. Tourists reported hearing a mechanical sputter, followed by a faint human laugh echoing through the gorge. Some say the ghost of Henry Dodd still rides the invisible currents, chasing a perfect flight that never came. Niagara has always punished pride, but Henry's story reminds us that gravity isn't the enemy. It's mercy, waiting at the bottom. In the summer of 1985, a man named Victor Lane arrived at Niagara Falls claiming he would beat gravity itself. He built a capsule from metal scraps and fiberglass, painted it gold, and called it the Immortal. Locals said the capsule looked more like a coffin than a craft. On the morning of July 12th, Victor stood at the launch site as mist devoured the sunlight. He shouted, "For glory!" before sealing himself inside the capsule. The barrel tipped forward and vanished into the fog like a coin into a well. For 10 seconds, silence ruled the air. Then a crash echoed from below. The rescue team rushed downstream but found only fragments of gold metal. Days later, a fisherman found something wedged between the rocks. It was Victor's helmet, cracked open like an egg. Authorities banned all future immortal stunts, but imitators still arrived. Each believed they'd find fame where others found the fall. But Victor's name faded faster than the mist itself. Locals still whisper that on foggy nights, they hear a hollow knock beneath the water. Some say it's the sound of the barrel still tumbling below. Others think the falls keep trophies of those who challenge them. And every few years, another dreamer arrives with another promise to defy death. But the falls never change. Only the names of the ones who fall. In 1993, a stuntman named Eddie Crow arrived at Niagara Falls with a dream and a jet-powered barrel. He claimed his machine could fly over the edge and back again. The locals laughed, but Eddie believed the falls were a stage made for him. For weeks, he tested his barrel behind an old factory, fueling it with homemade chemicals. Every night, the river seemed to whisper louder, as if warning him. On the morning of June 2nd, the police begged him to cancel, but Eddie only smiled. He lit the engine, and the sound tore through the mist like a scream. The barrel shot forward, wobbling toward the edge at impossible speed. For 1 perfect second, it flew. Then the flame sputtered out. The machine plummeted straight into the heart of the falls. The crowd gasped as the mist turned dark. Divers searched for hours but found only shattered metal and melted fuel tanks. The current had devoured everything else. A week later, Eddie's helmet washed up 30 miles downstream, bent in half. His family built a small memorial near the cliff, just a cross and a photo. But every year on June 2nd, locals say they see a spark rise from the water. Some believe it's Eddie, still trying to finish his flight. In 2007, a performer named Lucas Vane came to Niagara Falls claiming he would cross the gorge on a single wire, blindfolded. He called himself the Shadow Walker, promising it would be the most dangerous show ever attempted. Locals warned him that the winds near the falls could change direction in seconds. But Lucas only smiled and said, "That's what makes it art." On the morning of his stunt, hundreds gathered as the fog swallowed the sun. Lucas stepped onto the wire, balancing pole trembling in his hands. For 30 meters, he moved gracefully, like a shadow on water. Then a gust slammed into him from nowhere. The crowd screamed as he clung to the wire by one arm. He tried to pull himself up, but the pole slipped from his hand and vanished. In that moment, the mist turned crimson from the rising sun, or maybe from something else. His grip failed. He fell silently into the roaring abyss. The wire kept swaying long after he was gone. Days later, they found his balancing pole bent around a boulder below. His body was never recovered. Only his blindfold washed ashore. Tourists say at night they see a thin shape walking above the falls lit by the moon. They call it the Shadow Walker's Return. In 2014, an engineer named Victor Crane arrived at Niagara Falls with a dream to be the first man to fly across it using self-built wings. He called his creation Project Skyfall. The wings were made of aluminum and carbon fiber, powered by two small jet thrusters. Locals warned him that no engine could outfly the mist and wind over the falls. But Victor laughed, shouting, "Every great invention starts with a little insanity." On launch day, hundreds gathered at Table Rock to witness his first human flight. Victor strapped himself in and ignited the thrusters. For a moment, he soared upward into the sky like a dark bird rising from steam. Then a violent gust twisted him sideways. The left thruster exploded, sending debris flying across the gorge. The right wing tore free, fluttering like a broken feather toward the water. Victor screamed as the falls swallowed him whole. The crowd gasped, but no one could even see where he vanished. Minutes later, pieces of metal floated to the surface, twisted, smoking, and red. Rescuers only recovered a shredded harness and one burned glove. Victor's body was never found. Some say on windy nights you can still hear the scream of his engines in the mist. They call him the man who tried to fly the falls. In 1999, a Canadian mechanic named Leonard Briggs decided that barrels were outdated. He believed a reinforced automobile could survive the plunge and make him famous. Using scrap steel, he welded thick panels across the car's doors and hood. Inside, he built a homemade air tank system and safety harness. On a cold morning in April, he drove the car toward the edge of the Horseshoe Falls. The crowd lining the railings thought it was another joke, until they saw the engine rev. Briggs waved from the window, his helmet reflecting the gray sky. Then he slammed the accelerator and broke through the safety barrier. The vehicle soared briefly, suspended above the roaring abyss. For 3 heartbeats, it looked like he might actually make it. Then the nose dipped and gravity took hold. The car hit the base of the falls with a deafening splash. The reinforced roof crumpled instantly like paper. The air tank burst, shooting bubbles and smoke through the surface. Rescuers found the wreck 3 hours later wedged between 2 boulders. Briggs was still strapped inside, eyes open behind a cracked visor. His hands still clutched the steering wheel as if refusing to let go. The newspapers called it the fall that drove back.